and he's going to tell you his story and, you know, how it is possible to, absolutely, to grow up right here, go through these schools, and go out and do anything you want to do, okay? So, if you have enough drive and the characteristics that Mr. Gillette is going to talk about, okay? So this is one field. We went to NFEC, right, earlier last week, and you saw a whole bunch of other career paths. This is a path, okay? This is an exciting path, and I want you guys to just ask questions if you're curious, right? Of course, appropriate and respectful, polite, but I think Mr. Gillette would be happy to hear your questions as we get into it. So, Mr. Todd Gillette.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to give you my brief background, and I'm going to tell you I can talk about a bunch of different topics. I don't care what I talk about, so if there's something, raise your hand. If there's a question you want to know, keep going, stop me, and I'll address that question, then I'll keep going. I'm going to cover a wide variety of topics, and I'm going to start with a kind of a brief background. I grew up, does anyone here live on Constable Street? Where do you live on Constable Street? Where? A little louder.
2nd Street.
2nd Street? Okay. Yeah. So I grew up at 49 Constable Street, corner of Whittlesey and Constable. I delivered newspapers when I was 11. My mother was a teacher. My father was an alcoholic. My parents were divorced. My father also had a gambling problem. So I was very much grew up with my brother and I in a single mother situation. When I was 11, I remember my mother standing in the garden, and I asked her, Mom, how come when we got divorced, why do we have such a big car if there was just the three of us? And my mother said, in case we had to live in it. And that never left me. That told me, like, okay, it seems like we're okay, but we could not be okay like that. From that point, I said, okay, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be successful. I went out and got a paper route. The very next day was the Press Republican. Is that even a thing? Can you still deliver can kids still deliver papers?
No, now they deliver, I think, mostly by car. And yeah.
All right. So when I was a kid, your age, which was probably 1993, 94. I was trying to do the math in my head, but I think that's when I was here. So I woke up every day. It was the temperatures you get here in Malone, 20 below zero, 30 below zero, 363 days a year. But I was making $3,500 a year, and I invested that money. I was buying mutual funds and stocks at 11, and the idea I was going to save the money to go to college. Then when I got to college, when I applied to college, I applied to 17 schools, and I found out they would waive application fees if you went and physically walked to school. So I did that. I kept saying, so-and-so offered me this, can you beat that? So-and-so offered me that, can you beat that? We did 7 rounds. I ended up going to Siena College down in Albany for free on a full academic scholarship. When you're here in school, whether you like subjects, don't like subjects, some things you'll be passionate about, some things you won't. You want to do well in school so that you have the most number of opportunities that you could possibly have in life. So like I graduated at the top of my class even in college. I didn't go to grad school, but I thought I might, and I thought I might go to law school. I didn't do either of those things. But I was taking steps that were giving me opportunities if I wanted. You don't ever want to be in a position where you're just taking a job or taking something because it's what's put in front of you. Like, people talk about, there's like a scale. So, people who are really successful and there's people who aren't successful at all. Number one, never let your scale be defined by somebody else. So you got to decide what makes you happy in life. What is it you want to do in life? People can do what seem like mundane, basic jobs and make a fortune doing it. So you don't have to necessarily say, well, I want to make money and do a job that you hate. I can tell you, I have friends who make very high salaries, and every day they wake up and they hate going to work. And I'm telling you, you want to do something you're passionate about, because if you're going to spend 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day doing something, you want to do something you chose to do that you find interesting, and it won't feel like work versus if you just take a job that falls in your lap or just seems like an easy thing to do, it will feel like a very long life for 20 or 30 or 40 years while you're doing it. That's one point I wanted to make. Let's see. So my career, I have 4 businesses that I run right now. My main business that I started out of college, so during college, because I was from Malone, so anyone know where St. Regis Falls is? Yes. So a wealthy donor of the college had a friend who was a priest there who died. And this was long before GPS and Waze and Google Maps. So they knew that I was from Malone, from the North Country, and they said, can someone drive the president of the college to this funeral because nobody knows where St. Regis Falls is. So I ended up getting to spend about 14 hours in the car with the college president. He liked me. I guess I was funny, or didn't crash the car, so those were the 2 prerequisites. But he then let me start driving for him, and then after 2 or 3 months, he introduced me to a guy who was on the board of trustees at the college, who was a real estate developer. I started driving for him. So I drove for him on nights and weekends, and then he gave me my first internship. So to give you a sense of, does anyone know what a commercial real estate broker does? Anybody? No? Okay, I thought you were. Does anybody know what a residential real estate broker does? Come on, there's 100 shows on TV about residential real estate.
What's the root of that word, residential? Residence, okay. Billy?
Where do you live?
Where do you live? Homes.
So a broker is someone who sells something. So a residential real estate broker sells homes. Commercial real estate brokers help businesses, like why is Walmart where Walmart is? Why is Price Chopper where Price Chopper is? Commercial brokers help businesses and analyze a community, look at traffic counts, look at demographics, how much money do people make, what type of products could be sold there, and where it goes. So I do that. I also own a software company related to real estate. I own a TV production company. I have a TV show that was on Facebook Watch that did very well. We averaged 1.2, 1.3 million streams per episode. From that, we made a deal with the A&E network. So we have a TV show on the A&E network. The next season's coming out in October. That show is called The Real Estate Commission Master Broker. It's essentially me going around to businesses all over the country, meeting with them, helping them analyze what they're looking for. Are they looking for a warehouse space that they're growing in? Are they looking for office space that they need to downsize and move somewhere else? Do they need to find, they bought a franchise for Subway or McDonald's, and they need to find 3 locations. The interesting thing about my business was I graduated at the top of my class, and not in high school, but in college. And I took it, my mom thought it was nuts, my mother was a teacher. And the job's 100% commission based, and there's no benefits. Which means every day you go to work, you don't get paid anything. So until I close a deal, I get paid a percentage of that deal. So imagine going to work every day for a year, and you get paid nothing. And if you get sick, you have to pay the doctor's bill yourself. So it was high risk, high reward. My first year, I made $30,000. And I made it in the last 3 weeks of the year. So I worked for 11 months making $0, working 80 hours a week. But I was basically investing in myself in the business and learning the business because there's a lot to it. My second year, I think I made $110,000. So I was 23. When I turned 24, I made $280,000. And when you own a business, it can go up and it can go down, but generally your trajectory goes up. But that was a huge risk. I can name 50 people off the top of my head who got in the industry, didn't make any money, and then eventually quit. So, does anybody know who Arnold Schwarzenegger is? Yes. Do you know? Actor, what else was he? Governor also, yes. So, Arnold Schwarzenegger, I have mixed feelings about him as a person, but he gave a talk once where he said, in life, you can never have a plan B. You have to have a plan A, A1, A2, A3, A4. But so many times people will go in and say, I'll give this a shot and I'll do this for a week, a month, whether it's a diet program, whether it's a career, whether it's kind of people that I'll try out for the sports team. You never succeed with that mentality. It's a loser's mentality. Like, you gotta just find something that you think you really love and you're really going to like, and just say, no matter what, I'm going to do this until I fail. And once I fail, I'm going to figure out why I failed, and then I'm going to deviate, and I'm going to go on to my A2, my A3, my A4, and try something else. So many people give up too soon, and the problem is when you give up, you don't know if you were one day away from that breakthrough that was going to be the thing that made your career. Like, I can look back on my life, and I can say there was critical moments of deals or things that happened and decisions I made where I'm like, wow, that's where my whole life pivoted from here. I was here, I didn't think it was going to work. Like, I used to call my father up my first year and said, I'm not going to quit, but I had no idea it was going to be this hard. I'm like, I'm smart, I'm not the smartest guy, but I'm fairly smart. It's like, I am the hardest worker. And I just, literally, it was terrible. I'd call and go, this is bad, it's not going anywhere. Every time I'd have a deal that was about ready to close, it would die, but then I'd just have a new deal that would start. So I'd like grab onto that deal. Eventually it caught on, and then it really caught on. And
Like, it's hardest to go when you're not getting any positive reinforcement. Like for you that year, you're still putting your all in, even when you haven't had something wonderful happen.
yeah,
So
you gotta be
keep going.
self-motivated, and when it's hard, and when you're not seeing positive reinforcement, it's even harder. That's when you just have to like dig in and believe in what you're doing. Does anybody in this room right now know what they want to do for a living? What do you want to do?
I want to be a philosophy and religion professor.
Philosophy and religion professor? That's good. Do you know where? Like, do you want to have a specific school or just wherever like they should?
And where I can go.
Okay, that's what you're passionate about?
I want to make comic books for a living.
You want to make comic books for a living? Wants to make comic books for a living.
Okay. So, anybody else?
Lily? Traveling nurse.
Traveling nurse. What was yours? An auditor?
Author.
Author. Jeez, you said
You
author.
must
I was
love
about
that
to
English
leave
teacher,
you.
don't you?
Right, I know.
Border Patrol. So, well, go ahead. I have terrible hearing in the background.
Well, I
so
know it's
what did you say?
loud.
Military police officer.
Ooh, nice. MVP. Anybody else?
Nice and loud. Nice and loud.
Border Patrol. Doctor. Awesome. So my piece of advice I would say, regardless of what those careers you want are, find a mentor. And when you're in junior high or high school, you'd be amazed because nobody does it. So I know in junior high it's important for a lot of people, you want to fit in and not feel like you're standing out and blend. The irony of that is you spend a good part of your childhood trying to fit in and trying to blend. And then when you get out into the real world, you want to do just the opposite. You don't want to fit in and you don't want to blend, you need to stand out. So when you're trying to get a job, or you're trying to find someone to date, or to marry, or to whatever, you don't want to be like every other candidate. You want to have something special about you that people go, oh geez, that thing about that person, that thing's undeniable. Like if they said, hey, I want to do comic books, well that's the best comic book I've ever seen. If people see talent, you can't deny talent. Like you can say, I don't like the person, I don't like the personality, but if somebody is really good at something, that's undeniable. If you can find a career path where you can be undeniable in whatever that thing is that you're passionate about and you like, that's what you should do, regardless of what anyone tells you. If that's what you know you can do and you want to do it. The second thing I'll say is, most career paths seem easy. They're harder than you think. And people have a tendency to think they can accomplish more in a short period of time than they actually can. But they really undershoot the amount they can do in a very long period of time. So I would say to you now, either over the summer or going into high school, you should find people in the career that you want to be in and then try to shadow them. So if you want to be a doctor, go to the hospital and find a doctor and ask them if you can shadow. If you want to write comic books, go to comic book conventions or find publishers of comic books and find someone that you can mentor, even if it's only for a day, if you ask to shadow. In a short period of time, you can find out quickly, hey, is this really what I think it is? And kind of get a behind the scenes look at it. Because you don't want to spend, years pursuing something and then you actually get into the career, which is the way formal education happens. My brother was not the best student, and he said he was going to be a doctor, and I was like, yeah, you don't study ever. And he went to St. Lawrence and started doing the doctor thing, and then after a year said, oh, I'm doing terrible, I don't really want to be a doctor, and then he decided to switch things and get into computers. So you don't want to waste a bunch of time finding out something isn't really what you thought it was because you saw it on TV or because you saw somebody else do it. And nobody goes out and asks people if they can shadow. Like, it never happens. I guarantee you, if anybody in here called up the hospital and said, hey, is there a doctor there that can shadow? No one's probably asked them to do that. And definitely not a kid. And I'd say the odds of them telling you no is probably 1%. And if they tell you no, there's 30 other doctors that you could ask, can I shadow you for a day? Does anybody have any questions for me about TV, producing TV, being on TV, starting my own business, being an entrepreneur, the college process? Otherwise, we start talking about exciting things like credit scores.
No.
You
Actually, I'm
guys
going to talk
tried
about that
your
for a second.
hands at entrepreneurship. Was it easy? Was it as easy as you thought it was gonna be? They did an entrepreneurship project this year. It was not as easy as they thought it might be. Some of them did really well, some of them learned a lot of lessons.
What's the hardest thing you've ever done?
What's the hardest thing I've ever done? I've done some crazy things, like business-wise, but to me, it has to do more with, the hardest thing I've ever done, I can answer that. When I was 30, so I've always prided myself on being mentally tough and strong, and I can take anything.
Grit.
When I was 30, I had my first panic attack, and I thought I was having a heart attack. I don't know if anybody here has ever had anxiety or panic attacks. It seems more prevalent now than it used to be. That was terrible, and I went to a doctor and thought I was having, the doctors told me, they said, well, you're older now, your brain chemistry's just changed, this is just the way it is. So then I went and they gave me a series of drugs that had terrible, terrible side effects. Some of them, you'd be talking to me and you'd think I was on a 3-second delay, like I'm hearing you, and my brain's going, okay, that's what you said. And 5 seconds later, I'd ask you the exact same question because it killed my short-term memory, which when you negotiate contracts that are millions of dollars for a living, very bad scenario. And it didn't fix the underlying cause of anxiety. So I spent 5 or 6 or 7 years trying different medications, trying exercise, trying whatever, nothing worked. Then I finally, I just kept reading about it. And then I finally found a way that I just got off the medicine entirely and said, you know what, I don't believe that my brain chemistry's changed, or if it did change, I think it can change back. So I got off all the medicine, which was like, the withdrawal symptoms of going off some of the medicines was very terrible for like a solid month. But I started doing breathing exercises and doing stretches and doing other things that eliminated the anxiety. Like if I had to come in and talk to a group before, I would have had probably 2 panic attacks before we did one. That was the hardest. It was a 10-year process because I believed something to be true. So I guess the takeaway from that is, if you believe something to be true, it's probably going to become true. Like they say when you're driving, be careful where you're looking, because where you're looking is where you're going to drive the car to. So doctors were professionals, so when they told me something was true, I just said, oh, I guess it's like, if they tell you you have cancer, you have cancer. If you say, oh, you have anxiety, it's a disorder, you have to live it the rest of your life. I believe that to be true because they're professionals. But a lot of professionals don't know what they're talking about. And thank God that was the case, that, maybe my brain chemistry changed, but it changed back. So that was the hardest thing. I mean, I've done huge deals. I've been all over the world. I've done all kinds of things. That was very difficult because my strength comes from my mind and the way I think. So when my mind wasn't working the way I always knew it to work, that was very difficult to overcome. And I finally overcame it, but it took a lot of lot of trying different things to get back to feeling like I am who I am. Thank you for the question. Any other questions?
Is there anything you like regret or wish you could have done differently, like growing up with something in your career?
Sure. So this is what I'll say about regret. So, are there things in my life where I could have done differently or said things differently? Maybe if at times I'm a very aggressive person by nature. So it's kind of like here's a deal, move on it, like whatever. I can be short with people. I can be very direct with people. Hurting people's feelings isn't high on my did I hurt your feelings, do I care scale. Which is, my wife's constantly telling me I need to like temper that back. But when I'm in it, I'm doing the deals, I work on that. But in general, I feel like, not that you should be wild and crazy, I live a life of calculated risks. So anytime you're making a decision, you need to think through the process. Like if somebody comes up and slaps you, in that moment, you're like, am I going to punch that person? Am I going to walk away? Am I going to go tell a teacher? Whatever that scenario is, like people can, someone trying to steal my business deal, whether they found out. I think through, okay, I'm going to react. What are my possible ways that I can react? What's the best case scenario if I react that way? What's the worst case scenario? And most important question about it all, am I willing to deal with the consequences of whatever that action is? Life will go much smoother for you if you think about, what am I about to do? What's the best that can happen? What's the worst that happens? And can I deal with the bad or negative consequences of whatever that is? And then you just have to decide accordingly, because life at best is a calculated risk. You're never going to have all the information. You're never going to 100% know. You can look back on your life and go, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that. But in general, that's the best you're ever going to get. For me personally, I would say I don't have a lot of regrets. Like if I do things and I fail and they don't work out, at least I tried. You regret most of the things you were too scared to try to do than failing at something that you wanted to do. Because you're better off knowing, wow, I thought I was really good at this. Oh, no, I sucked at that. At least you know, and you tried. The worst thing is like, oh, I didn't go ask that person out to prom, or I didn't go ask for that internship. What if I had done that? Or there was that person, there was that opportunity. It was right there in front of me, but I just stood there frozen and didn't do anything. So those are the types of things. I don't have any major regret that I can really much.
How did you end up in TV?
How
How did that happen?
So does everybody remember COVID? Yeah. Okay. So it's easy to look back on COVID, but at the time running a business, COVID happened, and I was like, wow, they've just shut down every business essentially in the country, almost in the world. So I was like, I should do something while I'm sitting here, maybe I'll market my business. And I said to one of the guys in my office, I go, I think I'm gonna film a reality show about commercial real estate. And the guy looked at me and laughed and said, no, seriously, who do we know that's at a major network? And he's like, oh, I went to college with somebody at Viacom. Viacom owns MTV, VH1, and a bunch of other programs. So because they were all on hiatus and couldn't do anything, I hired them all to basically produce a show. We produced it, everyone thought we were nuts, it ended up getting millions of views. And then from there, then we started getting phone calls from TV networks that were interested. We went and talked to a bunch of networks. A&E understood it, and so we made a deal with A&E. Other questions? Oh my God. Okay, so his question was there anything when I first started? His question was there anything that when I first started made me not want to keep doing what I was doing? I can tell you, if you ever have to pick up the phone, you ever heard cold calling? Yeah. So I spent the first 6 months of my career cold calling, which is literally picking up the phone, calling complete strangers and businesses, saying, hey, I'm a commercial real estate broker. Do you have any property you'd be interested in selling or leasing? Click, no, click, no, click, no. I got told no so many times, I lose track. But life is a numbers game. So statistically speaking, if you're gonna call random businesses, every 30 to 40 businesses, you will get someone who's interested. The problem is I don't know if it's taught we learn it when we're kids, but you take a no as like a personal rejection and somehow it means you're less of a person. And all it really means is, no, the person wasn't interested in that thing that you were calling a pitching. So when you are first trying to get deals, that is like devastating. Every day you're like, oh my God, I don't want to make more calls. But you're just like, I know I gotta do 30 calls today. So you just start doing it, you take the no's, you hear what people say, you try to react and learn from it, you go talk to the people who cold call and say, what am I doing wrong? You get information from them. But eventually you start to figure it out. As soon as you get the first yes, you don't care about the other no's. All of a sudden, I made a sale, that was the whole point. And as soon as you realize it's a numbers game, you're trying to get off the phone with the person who's trying to tell you no faster than they're trying to get off of you, because you're like, wow, I know every 30 I'm gonna get a yes. Well, that was my second no. Okay, thanks, you're not interested. Bang, click, next. So it's just having, like, there's a saying that says, the same boiling water that hardens an egg softens a potato. So it isn't what happens to us, it's how we react to it. So that situation of, oh, I'm getting rejected, if you take it as rejection and you internalize it, it's going to affect you negatively. If you take that rejection and go, oh, well, this rejection is just one step closer to what I'm trying to achieve, it doesn't feel like a rejection. It just feels like a step to where you're trying to get. That answer your question? Do you have something that you've been thinking about that's potentially problematic and trying to work through? No, just a general question.
I noticed a pattern where every time that you were running into an obstacle, you were learning from the mistake, no matter what. If you're making phone calls, you're questioning, how do I need to change what I'm saying? Or what is it that got me to the yes? And, constantly adjusting, readjusting. Would you say that's a characteristic they could?
100%. That's true for any job you're going to go apply for, but in business particularly, because there's so many different personalities that, like, I might act a certain way in front of one client that I act a completely different way in front of another client, because it's knowing your audience. It's like, I just did a thing at a college where when I was there and you're doing presentations, you wore a full suit. So this is what I'll say to you in life. If you're going to go into a situation where you're applying for a job, I don't care what the job is, be overdressed. No one will ever fault you for being overdressed. If you come in underdressed, especially, you see this from COVID all the time. I've had people come in to interview with sweatpants, and it's like, they're like, oh, I thought it was a casual setting. It's like, well, I used to wear full suits. My casual now is what I'm wearing now, which still looks like, okay, I care enough to put on a sport coat, but I'm not wearing sweatpants either. So you have to know your audience in life of whatever it is that you're doing, and you're always better off being overdressed than underdressed, because if you show up underdressed, people will think you don't care. And if they're trying to decide if they're going to give you a job or hire you for whatever that is, you always want to put your best foot forward, because, it's cliche, but you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And first impressions matter. So, what was this? Yeah, the second part of that?
Just to readjust, that you're readjusting.
Oh,
each time.
constantly.
Yes.
Yeah, constantly. So, and life changes, right? It's like the way I'm doing deals today wasn't the way I was doing deals 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago. So technology's changed. Like, we do social media now. I could care less about social media. Like, the network's like, you have to do social media. So it's like, okay, I'll do social media. But for me, this is another thing I'll say. How many people on here use TikTok? How many people on here use Instagram? How many people on here have a goal of going viral? They're getting 1 million followers on social media.
Be honest.
Put your hand up high.
There we go.
Okay, we got
Jason's doing
one.
it.
So, this is what I'll say. The Powerball, if you want to win the lottery, the odds are something like 1 in 330 million. I can tell you, I have friends of mine who have millions of followers on social media. They do not have millions of dollars. So, everyone's perception that, oh, I'm going to go viral, and I'm going to have 1 million followers, and that means I have millions of dollars, and I drive Ferraris, and I live in big houses and go on vacation. Some of them do. But the thing I want you to remember is, like, I'll give you, for instance, in real estate. here's two statistics. There are 3 million licensed real estate agents in the country. If you pick today and you pick 18 months from now, 90% of us won't be in the industry anymore. Because with all the shows about real estate, so many people go, oh, I like houses, and they perceive that it's easy. You just go get your license, there's a low barrier to entry, it's a 75-hour online course. Get your license and they think, oh, money just falls out of the sky, I go show people these houses, and I'm a millionaire overnight. Same thing with social media. People think, oh, I'm just gonna get X amount of followers, and then companies are just gonna throw money at me. That's not how it works. The people I know who do social media have a part of their team that is actively going out soliciting business and sponsors. So that's not people's perception of how it works, it's how it really works. Even for our TV show, you know, we have a production company, the network, when it airs, for 3 weeks they promote the show on the network, and they have an entire public relations team. That public relations team does nothing to get me interviews, like any of the interviews or anything, if you see me not on the show, is because my own staff got all those placements on those podcasts or on those radio shows or TV shows or whatever. So people's perceptions of things from the outside,
They're not even a liaison.
though, like the head of, so if I say, hey, I'm gonna be on Good Morning America next week, the person from thing will show up, but they don't do anything. They'll show up, they don't do anything. They don't schedule it, they don't promote you, they don't do anything. It's just, they don't do it for any of the shows on the network. When Pawn Stars was the top show on the network, they didn't do it for them either. If someone would call and say, hey, we want them on, they would then say, hey, the Tonight Show wants you, but they don't actively promote it.
They don't set it up.
I don't know what they do all that. It's the craziest
Yeah.
thing I've ever seen. One more thing I want to talk about is, does anyone know what a credit score is? Yes, what's a credit score?
It's a score that they keeps track of how many payments you made.
Yeah, you're basically there, yeah. How many payments and what else? What's the point of a credit score? Why do banks or why do they exist?
For the bank to know how trustworthy you are.
For the bank to what?
Know how trustworthy you
To
are.
know how trustworthy you are. Yes, that's pretty good. So, credit scores in your entire life. You guys are taking tests and taking quizzes. The score that will matter the most in your entire life is your credit score. It's established when you're 18. So I'm going to give you rules of advice that you should listen to. It's America, so you cannot listen, but if there's
Right,
anything
keep
you
your ears
remember
out.
about this,
You ready?
when you turn 18, you will all of a sudden be getting a bunch of offers from credit card companies saying, hey, we'll give you this, it's 6 months interest free. And I'm going to explain about compounding interest for a second because I make a lot of money from it. But when you have a credit score, essentially there's like 4 main factors that go into it. It's pretty much how much credit, how long have you had credit, what's your total available credit, how much of that credit do you use, and do you make your payments on time? So do not ever, ever, ever get a store credit card where you go into Macy's or, I don't think Stewart says credit cards, but whatever the retailer is, and they go, hey, we'll give you 50% off today if you sign up for a credit card. You, in your life, only want to have 1 or 2 credit cards. Because the biggest factor, other than making payments on time, is how long your credit history is. So if you get a credit card when you're 18, and you say, okay, I've had a card that's my credit length is 1 year. If at 30 you get another card, then it goes, oh, well, you got one at 18, one at 30, well, that's 12 years, but you now have 2 cards, now your credit length is only 6 years. So that actually shrinks your credit, or it pulls your credit score down. And if you make only minimum payments, the average credit card right now, I think, is around 30%, which means about every 3 years, you think you bought that thing for $100, that means you now owe $300 if you made minimum payments. So there's so many things that look like you're, oh, I want this now, I want this now. My mother used to always say to me, if you can't pay your credit card in full every month, you can't buy that thing you're putting on your credit card. The biggest mistake you ever make in your life, if you want to be financially independent, whether that's being a millionaire or just able to pay the bills and live the lifestyle you want, is do not get buried in debt. And at 18, if you sign up for a credit card and you don't have income, that's compounding interest that will bury you. And I'll give you a for instance on the other side. Is there anyone in here who would like to be a millionaire with putting in zero effort at some point in their life? Anybody like to have $1 million?
Do any of you want to be a millionaire?
Okay.
Yeah,
zero
effort.
When I was 11, I was making $3,500 a year. So if I had taken that $3,500 a year and I put it in what's called like an S&P, it's an index fund, which is basically just a collection of stocks that move at a certain rate. Over time, that averages 8% of our annual return. So if you never wanted to have any risk in your life, but you're willing to put time in, if when you're 18, you invest $3,500 every year for 40 years, and the interest is compounded daily, at 7%, you'll have $1.2 million before you retire. That's taking $3,500 a life. It's not going to change your life. And you've only paid in 3,500 times 35,000. So you'll paid in 140,000, but you'll have 1.2 million. And all you did is $3,500. That's because of compounding interest. But if you go the opposite way and you're paying it in credit cards, that's 7% interest. So imagine 30% that you're paying. And then you go, oh, I'm going to buy that truck, and that truck's 8% interest. But that truck is going to take you 10 years to pay off with two problems. When you buy a vehicle, they depreciate. But the 10 years are worth basically zero, but you paid double or triple what the value of that truck is. So you have to balance in your life between having things you can afford and living in the moment that you could be dead tomorrow, but also not living like you're going to live forever and spending every dollar you have right now that's gone. So remember, your credit score is important. Never own a store card, and don't max out your card. Don't put anything on your credit card that you can't afford. How many people in here are thinking about going to college? Okay. Second thing I'll say, I have several friends of mine, so I have a group text that I have 6 friends on that group text that we all went to elementary, middle school, and high school together here in Malone. One of my friends who's a doctor, I'm 43 after this. I'm 43 years old right now. My friend who's a doctor just finished paying off his student loans. He went to Clarkson for undergrad, grad, and his postdoctoral work. He just paid off his college loan like 6 months ago. So when you're deciding where you're going to college, be competitive and be open-minded. You want to be at a school that has a program that you want, but be aggressive on applying for financial aid, scholarships. Be open-minded and don't be afraid to say, hey, so-and-so's offering me this, can you beat that? Because when you're younger, you don't understand what those dollars are, but when you have to start paying them when you turn 22 and you're not making that much money out of school, all of a sudden you go, wow, my choice is buy a new car or make these college payments. So when you say, do I want to go to private college? Do I want to go to a public school? Do I want to start off in community school? Do I want to skip college entirely, and do I want to go drive a truck for Coca-Cola and make $70,000? When you look at compounding interest, there's a lot of things to take into consideration. But with all those things being said, the takeaway, I think, is you want to think about what you enjoy doing, what you think you could be passionate about, as early in your life as possible. You want to go shadow somebody doing it and seeing, is the job what it appears to be, what it really is? And is that something you think you could be happy doing?
I have a question for you. One more on commercial real estate. What do we have to do to get a Chick-fil-A in the morning? Like, what do you actually look for in town? In all seriousness, when you and real estate brokers, movers are making those kinds of decisions, do you make the decision with the intent that it will move the community?
Okay, what do you need?
In other words, no.
Anytime you see that where an says, oh, I'm doing this for the community, that's a good thing to say, but no, they're doing it because they do the numbers and they're making good returns.
Yes.
So the interesting thing about Malone doesn't have, so most municipalities, you have to go through this whole process that sometimes takes months or years to get approved. I believe the Walmart in Malone was built with a building permit. There was no site plan review, there was none. So it's very easy to do things in Malone because of that. Chick-fil-A specifically, I have to pull the traffic count. So there's something called the New York State. If you're driving down the road and you ever hear the dump, the piece of rubber on the road, that's the DOT that's keeping track of how many cars a day are on the road. So when you have a McDonald's, a Walmart, a Bright Shop, or a gas station, they're looking at what roads have the highest number of cars traveling. And then they're also going, oh, well, which one was AM traffic going to work and which one was PM traffic? So like a McDonald's would rather be on the PM side of the road, a Dunkin' Donuts, a Starbucks would rather be on the morning traffic side. Depending if it's a smaller town, it's less important, but they typically look at, okay, a Chick-fil-A would say, are there at least 30,000 people in the demographic area? Because that's the minimum service. We're gonna say, we need a minimum of 20,000 cars a day. So we need to have a town that has that many people, at least a road that has 20,000 cars a day, and they need at least an acre of people. So to give you for instance, where Stewart's Buffalo, that's probably an acre. So a little bit less than that would be big enough. And they wanna have visibility because they have a double lane drive-through. They have that. When you get to be my age, you get to have alarms and take your blood pressure. So, yeah, so that's the same thing with Starbucks. I represented Starbucks coffee company for 6 years. So every Starbucks in the capital region, I analyzed and put them there. And so it's very big on traffic counts and access, easy to get to there. Do I think a Chick-fil-A could end up here? I think it's possible. One class per doesn't
That's just, maybe it's just me.
I think you have a very good chance of Starbucks.
Yeah, we'll take a Starbucks, right guys? Take a Starbucks too. Okay. I want you guys to know that when Mr. Drillette was in like middle school, I was only a couple of years older, but even then, I absolutely knew that he was going to be a millionaire someday. We all knew that, like we did, because he was so driven. It wasn't about the money. It was. He is one of the smartest people I've known, and thank you for coming back.
I just want to say one more thing when you said that because I forgot that I was saying this. So, as a kid, I was always driven by money and success because of being told the other side to live in college. But I can tell you, I'm at a point in my life where I still work and do deals for money, but I'm not motivated by money. It's useful for certain things, but I live way below my means. I don't drive Ferraris or things like that. But what's funny was in the last like 6 months, when I was here in middle school in FA, we were broke. We had no money. And I drove a pickup truck that came off my great uncle's farm, the 1971 Ford 100. If you've ever seen it, 3-speed column shift. So you're not shifting down here, you're shifting up here. And I had that, and I had this watch. This watch was the first watch that I bought with my paperwork money for $54 from Steinman. And 6 months ago, I found not the same truck, but the same make and model in Georgia, and I bought that old truck that I bought when I had no money. And I found this, someone was selling it on eBay, new in the box, which is the same watch that I had since broken. So in the last 6 months, I could buy almost anything, and I bought this. And I get just as much enjoyment out of wearing this watch. Does anybody know what this watch is? Anybody know? This is a solid gold. This is 18 karat solid gold. This is a presidential watch. This watch is worth, depending on the day, probably $50,000 to $60,000. So when you get to a point, in life, this watch was $53. I wear them at the same time interchangeably. This watch I bought because it meant something to me, because when I was 11 years old, I promised myself one day I'd have a presidential watch. I am unbelievably cheap. If I realized at that time how expensive the watch was, I would have never bought it or made that promise to myself. But it was one of the last promises I made of like, hey, when you're successful, you're gonna do this. But I also bought the watch right when COVID was hitting, and I knew people would be desperate and need to sell, so I waited until the watch dropped like 10 grand, and then I bought the watch, so I was at least making money on it, and then the watch doubled in value. So I still had to do things in a way I could make money from it, but I say that just to say, I'm from here, I grew up here, we had nothing when I grew up, and there's a whole big world outside of Malone, I will give the teachers my email address. If you guys go into the world and you want help being able to shadow somewhere, potentially getting jobs, any of that, just tell me you're from Malone and I promise I'll respond.
What do we say?
One more question, it's totally unrelated. Did anybody come to school today not wearing a winter coat?
It still happening.
What is going on? Like why is it no one just, it's not cool to wear winter coats? Why does nobody wear them?
Tell me who has shorts on. At least one or two in his Have a nice shorts.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.